If some questions are, please collect them because we have later a session for discussing the questions and any other considerations and observations. I leave the floor to Robin Doeswijk, who is head of European Affairs of the European Hematological Association, and he's experienced in international programs, having worked also as a program manager in the Atlantic Pacific Exchange Program. Welcome.
Thank you very much. So I'm currently head of European Affairs of the European Hematology Association. What does a European Affairs team do? It's the policy and advocacy work, it's regulatory affairs. And very importantly, we are always working hard to connect that policy and regulatory work with our expert groups, our expert networks. When you see my first slide or the next slide, you're going to think, well, oh my God, I hope this guy doesn't have too many slides. It's very messy, but I just wanted to, I actually made this for internal purposes, and then the slides don't need to look very pretty. What I wanted to show is that already for many years we have based all our policy and regulatory work, our collaborations on three key strategic goals or guiding priorities: affordable and equitable access to innovative therapies, support for hematology research, and the most general one, but very importantly, optimization of regulatory frameworks that affect the work of our researchers and clinicians in their day-to-day work. Now, already the part that you see on the right with the yellow highlighting, that is just a screenshot from a position paper that we developed back in 2016-2017. It identified harmonization, the need for harmonization of health technology assessment at the European level as one of the key steps towards improving decision-making on access. So I think the awareness that this was important was there early on. And as you can see, we also immediately said, well, you know, this will need to have the direct involvement of hematologists. The rest of my slides look slightly more organized. EU-HTA is obviously important for many medical disciplines, but it may be especially important for hematology. We're very much aware that there's a lot of innovation coming forth from hematology, but it's often for small patient populations, it's expensive, and it comes with all these complex evidence questions. And yeah, what we are hoping, therefore, will come out of EU-HTA is something that, of course, everyone in the room is hoping for, that a better evidence, a better information basis for better and more aligned decision-making on pricing and reimbursement, and ultimately, of course, better, more affordable, more equitable, and faster access for patients. So that early interest and our involvement throughout the political phase, the negotiations, the shaping up of the regulation, and now the discussions about implementation have landed us here as one of the organizations representing the academic medical specialties on the HTA stakeholder network. What do we see as our role primarily? So very importantly, an important role, if it's up to us, in helping to identify and help engage the experts. individual experts. That's also what the HTA regulation emphasizes. However, we would also argue that it's precisely also the collective expertise that is developed and constantly subject to discussion, to consensus making in the, say, the guidelines panels and the other highly specialized expert networks that we as medical societies provide. Education and training of clinicians on HTA, obviously flagging up practical obstacles. I will mention a few in a bit. Advice on standards of care. So that's we develop clinical practice guidelines at the European level. And we very much also internally are, trying to make everyone aware that it's very important that these clinical practice guidelines are not just seen as, a practical tool in the daily work of clinicians, but also have an important role of informing decision makers, regulators, and so that includes also HTA and payers. Alignment with and support for patient involvement, patient organizations. Very happy to see several in the room here, including from hematology, and connecting. Very importantly, the European expert networks that we facilitate and the national expert networks. How that works at an expert level, on the clinical level, you will no doubt hear a bit more about later this afternoon from Professor Wurman, who has just joined us. We are, Professor Wurman and I, working together with other national societies to try. It's a bit experimental, but we feel that it is worthwhile trying to connect what we do at the European level with the national societies, which in some cases are already taking an interest in HTA. Interacting with their national HTA bodies, but the majority of them don't. And we think that's very important. We think it can also help make the national HTA bodies realize that, it's also the doctors that want EU HTA to work. So this is about exchanging information, but it is also about really trying to get to some kind of consensus building between the European and national expert networks. Hopefully it will work two ways. So it will increase the awareness and the interest of the clinicians in EU HTA, and it will help them engage with, at the national level, with their national HTA bodies, and also get those interactions going, because they are, in many cases, still completely absent. The pain points. Topic of this convention just before implementation gets underway. I've grouped them into involvement of medical societies as stakeholder organizations and individual expert involvement. Obviously, at all stages, that involvement can only be of help if it's timely and substantial. We are definitely in all the legal text that pass by for public consultations, emphasizing that involvement of stakeholder organizations should not be a matter of may, but of should. We're hoping that we're concerned about the attitudes that we see among some of the national HTA bodies. Definitely not all. Some are definitely, as we also heard from IFA today, understanding the value of the EU HTA network and doing their best to get ready for it. But questions around readiness are not only there on the part of HTA bodies, there's also definitely, we're also looking at ourselves, are we EHA and other medical societies? For your information, I also chair the HTA working group of the Biomed Alliance, which brings together most European medical societies in Europe. Are we ready? It's very difficult also to know how much work will be coming at us and when. Those same questions of, it's difficult to predict workload, it's difficult to anticipate, so timelines for involving experts, that will definitely be a challenge. Clinicians, as you all know, they treat patients, they run studies, they teach at university, they volunteer for societies, and then, within very short periods of time, they will be asked to contribute to joint clinical assessments or joint scientific consultations, and there will be little time for their input. That will be challenging. It's for those reasons also important that their employers, the universities and the hospitals, better understand the value of EU-HTA. In our view, awareness amongst hospitals and university leaderships is miserable, pretty much zero. And it will be important, because if they don't support, recognize, encourage, facilitate the involvement of their top clinicians in EU collaborative processes such as this one, it's very difficult to get it right. So our resource questions, capacity questions are also there when it comes to, it takes a lot of time. We have a lot of experience with getting individual experts involved, particularly in the work of the European Medicines Agency, but also in the UNETA Joint Action 3, which ran a number of pilot HTAs in hematology. So we've also helped them identify experts and try to help get them involved. Conflict of interest in red for a good reason. It's my final slide. I see this as a potential breaking point. Lots of work has been put in by all of our organizations in trying to, think this whole system out, come up with great methodologies and guidelines. All super important, very much needed. However, I think we all understand, we talk about joint clinical assessments. Without the clinicians, without the right clinicians, we're not going to have the quality and the credibility that this system needs to work, that the joint clinical assessment reports need to have uptake and impact. So a level of pragmatism, of course, conflict of interest policies are important, full transparency is crucial, but there will need to be a degree of pragmatism in implementing this. Now, for more than a year in the HTA stakeholder network, I've been saying to the HTA community, look at EMA. EMA has developed over many years a system that works, that is pragmatic, that takes that looks at conflict of interest on a case-by-case basis. Unfortunately, due to European Court of Justice rulings last spring, EMA is now being forced to take a step back and is currently circulating for consultation a draft revision of its COI policy. I spent some time yesterday scrutinizing that, and I have to say that it's clear that EMA, and I really appreciate that, is still really making the effort to preserve some room for pragmatism. The draft COI policy says specifically that in certain situations it will be inevitable to find a pragmatic balance with the need to involve the right experts. And it goes without saying that this risk is present, especially in rare diseases and ATMPs. The quote at the bottom, it's a hematologist who also held high political office, She asked me not to quote her, so I won't, and I've actually adapted it a little bit, because as Bernard also told me at some point, there are actually doctors without conflict of interest who are very good and worth involving. But I think you understand what it is meant to say. We all, and that includes the doctors, have a measure of conflict of interest. We need to be transparent, but it needs to be managed. Thank you, and thank you to the organizers and to Professor Jan Vrate and colleagues for hosting us in this wonderful place.